Like, I couldn't have other friends around because she would just do things to try to cause a scene everywhere. She would go out with us. We would go out to the clubs. She was drinking. Yeah, she drank.
Sounds like Deborah was known for knocking back a few drinks, and she's admitted she was taking anti-anxiety meds, reportedly, and might have had an alcohol-induced blackout on the night her daughter went missing. Could she have forgotten what happened? Could she have forgotten key details? Does she remember anything? Are cops any closer to finding precious baby Lisa? I am taking your calls. What's your theory on this case? Call me 1-877-JVM says 1-877-586-7297. Straight out to Jim Spellman, CNN reporter on the ground, live in the neighborhood. What can you tell us about what the cops have uncovered during their 17 hours in the home, armed with a search warrant and a whole bunch of high-tech equipment? Jim.
Jane, they were out here until 1 in the morning last night. They searched in the house. They searched behind the house. They even had ladders going up and looking into the gutters on the roof of the house. We know they brought in X-ray equipment. That was part of the bomb squad unit that was here. Police won't tell us what they found exactly, and they tell us that they still don't have any breakthroughs. We were able to get a close-up view of the backyard and see where they cleared away a wide area behind the garage. We could see all of the debris, the vines and such that were in the back. We're in two big piles on either side of it now. Still no word on what they found exactly there, but we do know from police, still no breakthroughs, and obviously they still haven't found baby Lisa, the most important part of this story. Jane?
Well, there is an amazing article in People magazine, Gone Without a Trace, and there's some shocking new details in this article. Could this family have had money problems? Now, we are hearing from the People magazine article, Jeremy picked up a side job on the very night that Lisa went missing, and he did not call home to tell Deborah, his live-in partner and the mother of his child, that he was going to be late because their cell phone was turned off for non-payment. So I am wondering, Steve Helling, staff writer, People magazine, A, was this couple struggling financially? And is that why the mother of the missing girl was reportedly on anti-anxiety meds? But if so, why is she going out and buying a box of wine, Steve?
Well, yes, this is not a rich couple. This is not a couple with a lot of money. And they did have some struggles financially. There's no question about that. Whether or not that was the cause for her being on antidepressants, nobody really knows. Only she and her doctor would know that. But what we do know is that the day that this happened, yes, she went out and she was seen on surveillance getting a box of wine. Baby Lisa was nowhere to be seen. We're not sure if baby Lisa was being watched by daddy at that moment because he would have been working, or somebody else. We just don't know.
Now, I think the timeline is absolutely fascinating and reveals a lot. During this People magazine interview, Deborah and Bradley walked People magazine through the timeline of the events that night. So put your Sherlock Holmes hat on right now. 4:30 p.m. Deborah goes to the store to buy wine. And, by the way, some baby food and baby wipes. 5:30 p.m., Jeremy, the dad, goes to work. Deborah makes dinner. 6:40 p.m., Deborah puts little Lisa, the missing child, to bed. Now, then she begins to drink with neighbors outside on the stoop, drink wine. She admits having probably more than 5 glasses of wine. And if you add anti-anxiety meds, that supercharges it to something like 10 glasses of wine. 10:30 p.m., the neighbor goes home. Deborah goes to bed. 3:45, Jeremy, the dad, comes home from work, finds the window open, and the lights on and the door unlocked, and he wakes up here. And she jumps out of bed, and they realize that baby Lisa is missing. And then at 4 a.m., Jeremy calls cops to report Lisa missing. Detective Kevin Bain, Kansas City Police Coordinator for Crime Stoppers, what strikes me about this is that, A, do we have any knowledge of when anybody outside the family last saw this child who is now missing, this adorable, then 10, now 11-month-old child? We have the family's word that she put the child to sleep at 6:40. But did anybody else see the child? When's the last time anybody else, aside from this mother and this father, saw this little child.
Well, I'm really not able to comment on the case right now because it is an ongoing investigation.
Well, what's your theory then, Detective? I mean, let me put it this way. Deborah and Jeremy told People magazine that the police have told them they have a theory about what really happened that night. Quote, the couple say police presented a theory that Lisa had accidentally been harmed and that Bradley panicked and then tried to cover it up. So, obviously, the cops, Steve Helling, according to your article in People magazine, have a theory that maybe she was drunk, something accidentally happened to the child, and she covered it up. Now, I'm not saying that, and the cops aren't saying that. It's the mother of the missing child who is saying that. Listen to this from ABC's GMA, and then I'll get your reaction.
During interrogation, we found this. They showed me burnt clothes. They showed me a Doppler thing with pings from my cell phones, and I'm led to believe at this point that none of that was real. I hope the burnt clothes weren't real.
All right, Steve Helling, People magazine. The mother is telling us that cops have a theory that the child was harmed. She was drunk. She doesn't remember half what happened that night. Your thoughts?
Well, that certainly, the police are going to investigate any scenarios that they can come up with, and that certainly would make sense. That it stands to reason that if she was so drunk that she doesn't remember what she was doing that night, that perhaps there was some accident that happened. So, of course, responsible police work would be to check that out. But, the police aren't really telling us everything that they're doing right now. There's a lot going on behind the scenes that should probably come out in the next few days.
Well, let me tell you this. From what I've learned, police went in there with bomb-sniffing equipment. When I say there, they went into the home from which the child disappeared. And often you use bomb-sniffing equipment to see through solid objects like walls and floors. So obviously, Jim Spellman, you're there right outside the house. You have all these guys in white suits. Likely they are doing luminol tests, checking for blood. They are likely doing tests where they're trying to see if anything is buried beneath the floors, buried in the walls. They were going through the backyard with rakes. They are likely looking for, are they likely looking for a child's body? Jim Spellman.
Well, we don't know exactly what they were looking for, but that X-ray equipment I think is very important. We observed at least dozens of trips in and out of the house, and we weren't here every moment, so probably hundreds of times they went in with this, and we do know that that's what that equipment is often used for, to look inside walls, to look inside pipes, things like that. But they also did spend a lot of attention in this viney area in the backyard behind a shed. We know they took the shovels used in that with them when they left. It looked like they were bagging those up. Perhaps that those shovels themselves would be analyzed.
What are they looking for? We're taking your calls on this. 1-877-JVM says a child is missing. The mother says she was drinking and doesn't remember all the details. What are they looking for? What's your theory? More Baby Lisa. When we come back, we're going to talk to a neighbor in Kansas City, Missouri, live, who is right there in the middle of this unfolding drama. We want to find Baby Lisa. Stay right there.
What do you want to tell that person other than dropping them off? I mean, what do you want to tell them about Lisa?
She's everything. She's our little girl. She's completed her family, and she means everything to my boys, and we need her home. Crib, and I said, "What do you mean she's not in a crib?" And I just knew, something was really wrong. And we're running around the house and we're screaming for her, and she was nowhere. And then I said, "Call 911, call 911." And he said, "Where are the phones?" And they weren't on the counter where I left them. They were gone.
The mother of the missing child crying on television, but cops say that they haven't had a really useful sit-down interview with them in days and days and days. That the last time they really talked to them and asked them the questions that they want to ask them was back on October 8th. Why aren't the parents talking to cops? And they have lawyered up, but they are not considered suspects. Although cops spent 17 hours going through their home with a fine-tooth comb after obtaining a search warrant. A search warrant. We don't know what the basis of that search warrant was, but you can't just go into a home unless you have good reason and you outline your theory of the case. Now, what about their side? Well, during a People magazine interview, Deborah, the mother of the missing 10, now 11-month-old child, gave her theory of what happened that night. Here's a quote. What I think is that someone was watching us and they saw Jeremy's van was not there, and that it just happened to be that night the window was open. So the question is, does this family have any proof at all of a stalker? Well, I want to go back to Detective Kevin Bain, Kansas City Police Coordinator for Crime Stoppers. I understand you've gotten hundreds and hundreds of tips. Tell us about it.
Well, that's correct. When the abduction originally took place, we're basically the repository for that type of information, and to date, we've received over 400 tips to our hotline related to baby Lisa's disappearance.
How do you tell if it's a good tip or a bad tip?
Well, that's not really our job. We take in the information and we forward it on to the detectives that are actually on the ground working the case. They will prioritize that information.
Who are the people who are calling? Who are the people who are calling? Just citizens? They just pick up the phone, they say, hey,
yes,
well, we know that there was a tip that there was a child spotted at a delicatessen 100 miles or so outside of Kansas City with two women who left apparently without finishing their meals. And then on that basis alone, people said, oh, that's very suspicious. But the cops tracked him down, and that's not a good tip. So there are a lot of tips coming in, but do they really have anything to do with the case? I think that's essentially the issue. I want to go to Kim in Iowa. We're now going to your phone calls. Kim, Iowa, your question or thought?
Yes, I wanted to ask the question if, you know, who the mother was drinking with. I mean, I guess they were, it was her brother-in-law maybe she was drinking with, but it sounds like that there was neighbors that she was drinking with. So I guess I'm just wondering, you know, if they've questioned anybody.
Okay, you raise a good point. Now, she is buying wine here, buying a box of wine with her brother, who I believe is about 20 years old. Now, apparently she doesn't have a license, so he drove her to the store and drove her back and just left her there, is my understanding. And the person she was drinking with was actually her next-door neighbor. I want to bring in an exclusive interview that we have